school today. Couldn't make it through the whole thing.
You went out
Yes,
and
it's
looked at,
hereditary.
oh,
You could try homeopathy. It might work.
Homeopathy?
Yeah,
Well, you never
remember when
know.
Michael told us about homeopathy?
I'd have to figure out what it is first, and maybe I'll try.
I kind of know what it is, I just do not, to me, it's, I don't know, maybe to me it's the power of mind over matter. You actually believe it works, and you actually physiologically make it.
Right.
But who knows, it could be. He's doing okay, he just passed the halfway mark today, so.
good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the Washougal City Council meeting for September 19th, 2011, and please ask that you rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Forsberg, could you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Coaston,
Here.
Councilmember Shoemaker,
Here.
Councilmember McDaniel,
Here?
Councilmember Delavar, Councilmember Greenlee,
Here.
Councilmember Morris, and Councilmember Russell.
Here. I did receive a message from Councilmember Delavar that he is on vacation and out of town and asked to be excused this evening.
So move.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Amendments to the agenda. I know we have item number 6, the swearing in of the new planning commissioner will not happen this evening. Are there any other amendments to the agenda? Okay, hearing none. Do we have any correspondence?
No, sir.
That takes us to a special presentation this evening. Mr. Anderson and Mrs. Curry, would you like to step forward, please?
They're getting you a chair, Barbara.
We practiced this before we started. Well, to read this.
There's a company back on the East Coast, National Braille Press, that puts out a catalog periodically, and one of the items in that catalog, a year or so ago, was an American flag. And it's tactile in that so that it can be touched by the blind and felt. And Barb and I each have one, and it occurred to us that it would be nice if the city had one on display. The stars and stripes, of course, are there. The white ones are raised, the red ones aren't, and the pledge is written in grade 2 Braille, which is contracted Braille on the red stripes. And there is a story that comes with the flag. When we first got it, we assumed the story was Betsy Ross, but it isn't. It's why this particular flag was created in this form. Barbara's going to read that story to you.
The story of Jesus Sanchez Cabral, how his loss of sight altered his life course of one of his sons and wrote a new chapter in the history of America's flag. Jesus Sanchez, Chuy in quotes, Cabral, was born in Valparaiso, Zacatecas, Mexico in 1916 during the height of the Mexican Revolution/Civil War, 1910 to 1920, one of the last of the long series of Mexican Indian wars. As the war waged on, Jesus' father instructed his wife to leave for the United States and to take the children with her, while he remained behind to fight to keep the family land. Unfortunately, he was killed and was never to see his small family or they him again. Jesus, along with his mother and siblings, made their way to Chicago, Illinois, which was to become their new home. At the time, Jesus was only 2 years of age. For the next several years, the family lived in Chicago. Working for the railroad led the family to Kansas and eventually to Hutchinson, Kansas, where their new home became a permanent one. In 1941, World War II broke out, and Jesus, barely 25 years of age, enlisted in the Army Air Corps. From 1941 to 1946, he was deployed to Eastern Africa, the South Pacific, and Northern Europe. During his time in military service, he was awarded several medals. Following the war, Jesus married and fathered 11 children. 10 years previous to his death, in March of 1998, he became blind due to glaucoma. Blindness robbed Jesus of many things, but perhaps nothing saddened him more than no longer being able to post the American flag on his front porch, something he regarded as the duty of all Americans. In 1993, among the many children, his middle son, Randolph, took up an interest in Braille and services to the blind. In 1998, the same year Jesus died, Randolph founded an institute in Wichita, Kansas, in his father's memory, directed toward helping those who are blind or have low vision. In 2000, the institute was officially chartered under the name Kansas Braille Transcription Institute, KBTI. One evening, while working late in his office, Randolph created a tactile Braille American flag to honor his father. In February 2008, with the help of U.S. Congressman Todd Tiahrt, the U.S. Congress unanimously authorized placement of a bronze monument of the Braille flag to be placed in Arlington National Cemetery as a tribute to all blind veterans of all wars and other blind Americans. In April of 2008, the Braille flag was officially installed at the cemetery. In 2008, while campaigning in Kansas, Randolph met with Illinois Senator Barack Obama and Arizona Senator John McCain and personally presented each of them with an American Braille flag. Today, the American Braille flag is mass-produced in Wichita, Kansas, and literally thousands have found their ways into the hands and hearts of many sighted and blind civilians, veterans, veterans hospitals, memorial parks, offices of elected officials, schools for the blind, and many other places. America has more than 30 million blind and low vision civilians. Randolph's goal is to make one of these flags available to every blind and low vision person in this country. Proceeds generated from the American Braille flag benefit blind and low vision veterans and other blind, low vision Americans. Thank you. And God bless America.
I present this to the city. The flag itself is on thermoform, which is the plastic film, so it is basically safe. It can be washed or whatever anything happens to it, and we would hope it would be displayed somewhere where the visually impaired or whatever can touch it. Thank you for your time.
Tom, thank you very much. And Barbara, thank you. This is, it's not often I end up speechless, but this is one of those presentations that is just very, very cool. And, you know, certainly, I know all of the council appreciates the time that both of you put towards the efforts of the city, not only being here for our meetings, but volunteering as you do on our boards and commissions. So I'm gonna ask, Jim Dunn to please take possession of this, and Jim, if you could, see if we can't get this mounted in an appropriate frame that doesn't have glass on the front. And mount here in the council chambers so that it's available.
This is a printed copy of the story of the flag.
Wonderful.
And this other piece that's in the pocket is the key to tell you what the stripes and things represent. It goes with the flag also.
Okay.
You can keep all of this.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you again. Well, Councilman Shoemaker, part of that certainly works into your mission on getting flags into every home in town as well. Thank you again, Barbara. Thank you, Tom. Do we have any members of the public that would wish to address council this evening? Mr. Olson.
Mr. Mayor, council members, my name is Harvey Olson, 3903 R Street. That's a couple blocks above the high school. Several meetings ago, I suggested to the mayor and council members that any possible layoffs of city personnel in 2013, when it's projected the city will be in the red financially, should start with the administrative staff, not police or fire, like notoriously cities do around the country. Don't wait until 2013. You can begin now by not filling the position that was occupied by R.J. Stevenson. R.J. did by himself all of the financial duties required by the city, even though he was found by the city's hiring process not qualified for the top job. R.J. did all of the job requirements without complaint. And since the president finance director is more qualified, that person should be able to handle the job by themselves without any problems. Now, when and or if the economy improves enough in the future to add any staff, then and only then should any newly created or vacant positions be filled. That's newly created or vacant positions, please. At that time, any vacant first responder position should have first priority. The safety of Washougal is more important than a staff assistant, in my opinion. Enough is enough. Cut back on spending. All governments, federal, state, county, and most cities are or will be in the red. Now is the time for all council members and the mayor to be fiscally conservative. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr.
I
Olson.
appreciate the extra 5 seconds.
Oh, you still got time on the clock. Do we have any other members of the public? Good evening, Don.
Good evening. Don Bolin, 32934 Southeast 20th Street. I want to talk to the council. I have a concern. And the concern is the businesses on 14 that I think with the construction may end up going out of business. As I understand it, the council members have gone to the state and asked them to do something. And they said basically, at least the feedback I got, there's nothing that can be done. That's certainly a good first step, but now I think it's time for the city to stand up and support the local businessmen. And for the earth of me, or for the life of me, I can't figure out why the piles of dirt should have gone all the way to the intersection so you can't even see the businesses. I would suggest that they move it, if nothing else, stack it higher, farther down the road. But if you expect them to survive, you gotta be able to see them. And I think that's the job of the city, to stand up and support local business. And I think it's something that would be well to spend some money on. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Just so you know, Don, the state has responded. We did make requests of the state, and the state has responded positively to those. And I believe I even saw a framework for some new signage that they're allowing out onto that intersection.
Do something?
Yes, the state has never said that they're not going to do anything.
Well, I was missing it before.
Yeah, they are already putting some signage in, I believe, at
Signage,
partial.
are they gonna move the piles of dirt?
They are not moving the piles of dirt.
Well, what are they gonna do, put signs on top of the piles of dirt?
No, if you go out right now, there's a very large framework that is put right into the pile of dirt halfway up it, right at that intersection that will support signs for those businesses along that area.
Well, I guess I'd still like to see if there's anything you can do to move the dirt.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wishing to address council? Okay, moving into consent agenda. This evening, we have a consent agenda consisting of 5 items. The regular accounts payable claims in the amount of $116,626.99. Agenda Bill 113-11, the awarding of a bid for the wastewater treatment storage building construction. Agenda Bill 11411, a quitclaim deed from Rolling Meadows. Agenda Bill 11511, a modification of the CDBG agreement with Clark County and Washougal for the E Street Improvement Project. And Agenda Bill 11611, a memorandum of understanding with Local 307W of the Washington State Council of County and City Employees and the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees.
Mr. Mayor, did I miss the amendments to the agenda? Did you announce that? Because I'd like to move items 4 and 5 to new business, if we may.
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that we approve items 1, 2, and 3 on the consent agenda.
Very good.
Hearing no objections, so ordered. That will take item number 4, Agenda Bill 11511, a modification of the CDBG agreement with Clark County and Washougal for the East Street improvements. Mr. Dunn.
Thank you, Your Honor and Council. Staff is submitting a modification to the CDBG agreement between Clark County and the city for the East Street Improvements Project. This agreement is being modified to extend the end date for the project from September 30th, 2011 to January 31st, 2012. The period of performance end date is being extended from August 31st, 2011 to December 31st, 2011. The East Street project is near completion, but the city requires additional time to complete the inspection and project correction process. Recommended actions: authorize the mayor to sign the modification of the CDBG agreement between Clark County and the city of Washougal for the East Street Improvements Project.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we authorize the mayor to sign the modification of the CDBG agreement between Clark County and the city of Washougal for the East Street Improvement Project.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second. Council discussion? John?
Just, could you, for the public's benefit, would you be able to just talk a little bit about why we're extending this, if it's passed?
Sure. Yes, this is more or less a housekeeping item. We are going to be beyond our September 30th date, and CDBG is a funding source for the project. We will have some punch list items and some different things that we need to take care of after September 30th. So they require modifying the contract, and that's what this is about.
Thank you.
Any other council questions? Okay, I've got a motion and a second to authorize the mayor to sign the modification of CDBG agreement between Clark County and the city of Washougal for the East Street Improvements Project. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Agenda Bill 11611, an MOU with the 307W.
I'll take that one.
Okay.
Mayor? Yes, this is a requested action to authorize the mayor to sign a memorandum of understanding with our local 307W. The MOU adds a new position to the salary schedule. That position is accountant. And as we reported at our workshop last week, we are replacing the accounting manager role and eliminating that management level position and filling it with a line level professional accounting position instead. Pursuant to our contract, it's required to be a represented position because it is a new position that doesn't exist on our salary schedule. Per our agreement with the 307, we needed to add this in, and that's the effect of the MOU.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we authorize the mayor to sign the memorandum of understanding with local 307W to assign the position of accountant to level 19 in the current salary schedule.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Council discussion? John?
Mr. Mayor, I rise in opposition to the creation of this new position for the accountant. In a time where we should be reducing staff in order to save money, I personally can't justify creating another position for possible salary increases and possible increases in benefits down the road. I would encourage council to reject this position.
Any other council discussion?
I'm just curious. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Jennifer, would you tell us how this position is going to be funded?
It's a position that's below the position that RJ held as the Assistant Finance Director. We're not filling the accounting manager position, which is a management position, and then the accountant will be funded from it'll be a decreased salary and benefits from the accounting manager position.
Oh, that actually was what I was going to ask. And thank you.
Any other council? John?
Just to clarify, because they will be union, they'll be part of negotiating contracts for in the future, correct? So if there are in the future any step increases in salary and in benefits, this position will be a part of those increases, correct?
This position is a union position.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Any other questions from council? Okay, I've got a motion and a second to authorize the mayor to sign the memorandum of understanding with local 307W to assign the position of accountant to level 19 of the current salary schedule. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Russell?
No.
Councilmember Morris?
Aye.
Councilmember Greenlee?
Aye.
Councilmember McDaniel?
Aye.
Councilmember Shoemaker?
No.
And Councilmember Coaston?
Aye.
Motion carries. Agenda Bill 11711, a resolution to amend Chapters 4, Employment, and 12, Shared Leave Policy, and add Chapter 2A, Compensation for Department Heads and Other Non-Represented Employees to the Personnel Policy Manual. David?
Thank you, Mayor. Before you is a requested action to approve a resolution that amends your personnel policy. It does so in three principal areas. The first is in Chapter 4 of the policy. Specifically, there is a section there that deals with reassignments and special assignments for staff. It provides the mayor or designee the ability to deploy our staff in the way that's best suited to the projects that we're currently working on, and sometimes that entails a special assignment. The existing policy limits special assignments to 6 months and doesn't really provide for anything beyond that. We would have to come back, I would presume, and talk about the specific project and assignment with the council. The proposal before you in this part of the resolution is to allow the mayor or designee the ability to continue a special assignment deployment beyond 6 months in those cases where such an extension would be warranted. I think it's important to clarify here that this is a non-financial item, this particular item. The special assignments don't come automatically with additional compensation. If there was additional compensation involved because of an out-of-class assignment per se, we would have to make that work within the existing appropriation from the council. In the event that we couldn't make that happen, then we would have to come back to the council, as you know, with a supplemental budget. The intent of, and the case in point that's driving this particular modification is non-financial, and there will not be an accompanying supplemental budget request to fund additional salary. It's really just to extend a deployment on a special project that we have going right now. The second piece of the second principal piece of the agenda bill is in Chapter 12, our shared leave policy. This is really more of a housekeeping or bookkeeping item. There is a policy that's been in place for a while that allows employees to donate their unused vacation time, subject to certain limitations, to individuals who find themselves in a difficult situation personally or their family, typically a medical situation that's taking some time. It's a very common policy. However, our policy says that because we want people to take vacation and get refreshed so that they can be the most effective they can be for us, there's a requirement that you have taken a certain amount of vacation before you can donate some vacation to someone who needs it. And it requires that you've done that within the year that you're seeking to make the donation. Obviously, you run into problems with that early in the year, or if your vacation plans are always late in the year. So this is a simple change that just basically puts a rolling 12-month calendar in place, if you would, for individuals who are donating. We look in the rearview mirror for 12 months to make sure that they've taken the adequate vacation time, and then we can approve their donation, their generous donation of some of their unused vacation time. So that's the Chapter 12 change. And then finally, there's a new chapter being proposed, Chapter 2A. It's essentially taking an existing document, which is referenced in our code, the Department Head's Manual. It takes it out of the code and puts it into the policy where all of our other personnel policies are. And a companion item to this agenda bill is the next one that deals with repealing the municipal code in all areas where it's redundant with our policies. There are a number of editorial type changes, cleanup type changes in the 2A that are non-substantive. There is one substantive item in Chapter 2A, and that is the addition of a new classification in the organization called Assistant to the City Administrator, and it identifies it as an NU2 position, and it provides for a time-off package that's similar to our represented employees in the 307 to make it distinct from our other management positions. This is a non-management position, but it is a non-union position because it is a confidential position. Again, this is not a financial proposal. There is not a request for appropriation. All of this fits within the existing general fund appropriation that the council has made for this year. That's, in a nutshell, what's in the resolution. The recommended action is to read the resolution by title only, and then to pass and post and publish the resolution in the usual manner.
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that we read the ordinance by title only.
The resolution.
This resolution.
Hearing no objection, so ordered.
A resolution amending the Washougal Personnel Policy Manual, Chapter 4 related to employment, Chapter 12, the shared leave policy, and adding Chapter 2A related to compensation of department heads and non-represented employees.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we pass and publish in the usual manner.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to pass and post the resolution in the usual manner. Council discussion? David?
Move to divide the issue into 3 component parts.
Second?
Okay, I've got a motion and a second to basically break this agenda bill item out into 3 different agenda bill items. Any council discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Item number 1. Don, if we break these apart into 3 different pieces, are we still good with the final resolution that encapsulates all of them?
We have to redraft it, but that's fine. Whatever council decides to do, we can redraft it.
Okay. Item number 1, 4.1 of our personnel policy discusses temporary reassignments, states that those reassignments cannot exceed 6 months. The proposed amendment to this section of the policy suggests that while it should be typical for such reassignments not to exceed 12 months, however, in the event an extension is warranted, the mayor and/or his designee can authorize such extensions. What would be the council's pleasure?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to pass and publish the ordinance in the usual manner.
Second.
Resolution.
Resolution, second.
I thought these were code changes, which had to be,
No.
okay.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second to authorize the resolution change and to pass and post it in the usual fashion. Any council discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure what we're doing here. Are we discussing all 3 issues or just the one?
Item number 1.
Item number 1. Okay, yes, I have a bit of discussion, please. I've seen a lot of government organizations that have policies and union contracts that have policies at the federal, state, and local level that limit temporary assignments to anywhere from 30 to 180 days, at the end of which time, if you haven't moved the person back, they've just been promoted automatically. What I learned from this and the study of these types of situations was that if you need to keep somebody in a temporary situation for a year, what you're really talking about is reorganizing your organization. So I'm not in favor of this going for 12 months. I can see it going for 6, based on what we learned from what Joanne and Trevor are going through right now. But 12 months, I can't see that one.
For clarification, we don't have anything that automatically makes anything a permanent
A promotion?
promotion or any of that in our
Not at
system.
all.
It has to physically be done by myself or a department head in order for that to take effect.
Correct. And then this policy, in this particular context, would not be applicable to any of our bargaining units. Those types of assignments are governed by the collective bargaining agreements. They have limits as well. And if we need to make extensions to those limits, we do that by memorandum of understanding with the collective bargaining unit. It doesn't come to the council because it's a non-financial matter.
Dave?
I use these examples merely to point out that other organizations have decided not to do these things for good reason. I'm aware that none of these things apply to us here at this time, and I hope the heck they never do.
Any other council discussion? Rod?
Councilman Shoemaker, what's your resolution to this then? To keep Joanna and Trevor in that position where they're in the middle of all of their findings and that type of thing? What's your suggestion to continue in that, where we're going with that?
If I may, I don't think we're talking about that. I think we're talking about generic positions and assignments here. Are we talking about Trevor and Joanne?
Theirs will be the first one that will most likely trip the 6 months.
We've already passed 6 months, frankly. We should have been here last month with this.
Well, if that's the worst thing that happens to us, I think we're in good shape.
Mr. Mayor. So could we say then that, I mean, is there anything wrong with just making them 6 months and then they have to come, would that something that then come before council?
They're 6 months now.
That's the process now.
Okay, and then we just renew it after 6 months, right? For another 6 months if we need to? Is that
Depends
correct?
on the council and depends on the will of the council. What we're asking for is the latitude with the council already having approved the initial change in status of particular employees for whatever it happened to be. If it has some time period past that 6 months that it runs, not to exceed a year, that we have that administrative latitude to just go ahead and continue them in that without needing to bring the same topic back to council again. Well,
I think I understood what you said, that so-called ordinary employees, meaning union employees, are not covered by this. Rather, they are covered by their bargaining agreement, by their union contract.
Correct.
And so, for example, we had a firefighter who was on limited duty because he had some job-related injuries. And my memory is that we had him operating as effectively as fire marshal, which he could do physically, and that let us keep him working and get the work out of him rather than putting him on medical leave. Is that is that roughly accurate?
That's roughly accurate, and we had an MOU with the IAFF that allowed us to deploy in that way. It really wasn't an assignment discretion and a deployment discretion issue, as much as it was a different issue in the contract and the fact that that type of shift doesn't really exist in our contract with the IAFF. And so it was more about the shift assignment, a little bit about the actual deployment. But yes, it's an administrative process with the bargaining unit through an MOU, and we executed MOUs. Again, those don't come to the council because they're non-financial in nature. And I should clarify that the initial assignments in this particular project, both of Trevor and Joanne, and then for Mitch and Jim, in the acting incapacity, were not action items for the council. There was informational discussion about that at our retreat, and I think the administration wanted the informal approval of the council, knowing that that was a significant undertaking around the strategic planning process. And I think appropriately, the mayor had us bring that through you in that informal process. And also, I don't believe that the proposal in front of you says 12 months. It just says may be extended. And I've heard a couple of people, council members, reference the 12 months. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear.
So this applies only to so-called non-classified employees.
Right. It applies to all employees unless it's otherwise governed or trumped, if you would, by a union contract. And all three of our contracts do happen to have, in this context, some specific language that would govern. So this would apply to your non-union personnel. Your personnel policy, I think, appropriately provides administrative discretion to the administration to deploy resources in the best way possible to accomplish the intent of the council. This provides some additional flexibility. If a project or an assignment runs longer than the 6 months, it eliminates the need to create a process by which to engage the council in a deployment conversation, if you would. Again, non-financial.
Right.
And I think that's really the crux of the issue. Should there be administrative discretion, if it is the pleasure of the council, for the administration to deploy non-union resources in the best way appropriate to serve the mission of the organization, or does the council want to be involved in that deployment conversation if those types of special deployments take longer or are going to take longer than 6 months? That's really the crux of the question.
Thank you.
Other council? Mayor? Dave? And I think, Councilman Morris, the answer to your question from my perspective is, I think 6 months of assigning somebody to, other than their usual duties, is sufficient. And if it's not, then I think that's an issue that needs to be brought back to the council on a case-by-case basis. And to authorize in the personnel manual to exceed that 6 months, I think is not good policy. As a manager in the federal government, I was limited to 90 days. And if I wanted to exceed that, boy, I better have a good reason, because I was going to be taken to task for it. And I think that's a good way to handle it. I like the idea of the checks and balances.
I don't have any real problem with that, Councilman Shoemaker, but I know that when it becomes that type of a policy from administration, that they're just simply trying to get these people to go on and finish that project. I think it needs to come back to us when it's a financial issue, but I'm not convinced it needs to come back to us each time when they want to deploy their personnel the way that they see fit as administrators. We're policy makers, and I understand that, but we're also looking out for the checkbook, so that's the reason that I think it should come back to us when there's a money issue.
And you make an argument that I would normally make, to put people in charge and give them the discretion to do what they need to do. In this case, I would argue the other side of the argument, and therein lies our differences.
I'm just a little surprised that we would be holding up the federal government as an example of efficiency and good management.
Point taken. Point taken. Any other council discussion? Okay, I've got a motion and a second to approve, basically to approve item number 1, the exceeding of 6 months for temporary reassignments. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Roll call.
Councilmember Coaston,
Aye.
Councilmember Shoemaker,
No?
Councilmember McDaniel,
No.
Councilmember Greenlee,
Aye.
Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
and Councilmember Russell.
No.
And mayor votes yes. Motion carries. Item number 2, section 12.04. 1 of the shared leave policy discusses eligibility to donate vacation time that is converted to sick leave for a requesting employee. That has been problematic for employees wishing to donate to requesters during the early part of the year, as the current criteria are based on a calendar year basis. The proposed amendment to this policy is recommending that the criteria be based on a rolling 12-month period instead.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we pass and post in the usual manner.
Second?
Got a motion and a second to pass and post the item in the usual manner. Council discussion? Dave?
I think this is a great idea, given the accident that we had recently and the impact that it had on our people and the way their coworkers stepped forward to help them out. I think it's a terrific policy.
Any other council discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And item number 3, add the current standalone compensation department heads and non-represented employees manual to the personnel policy manual as section 2A. Non-substantive formatting and general editing amendments are proposed. Additionally, a new position of assistant to the city administrator is added at a new NU2 pay level with its own vacation schedule that is similar to that of represented local 307W employees. The position will provide high-level executive support to the city administrator, the mayor, and human resources that will include citywide coordination and oversight for records, management, and public record requests, ongoing website maintenance and updates, confidential support to human resources, public information, and communications.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we pass and post in the usual manner.
Second?
I've got a motion and a second to pass and post the item. Council discussion.
Mr. Mayor,
John?
how much money is going to be reallocated for this assistant to the city administrator?
This particular position is funded out of the general fund. And the overall package of reorganization in the finance department, including the elimination of a management position, backfilling it with a lower level professional position, the accountant that we just looked at, and then introducing this position, combined with phase one of the update to our indirect cost plan, is estimated for the remainder of this year, or is that a calendar year estimate, to save the general fund. And I forget what the number was, Jennifer.
It's a calendar savings of almost $11,000.
Right. How much is this position going to cost?
The salary range, is that what you're asking?
Salary range is.
Depending upon where, let me get to the end there. Depending upon where in the salary range we are able to successfully recruit. But I'll give you the top step. It is roughly $60,000 would be the salary. I'm not sure what that would be with benefits. What would that?
Benefits are roughly $22,000.
So 80.
So 83,000, roughly?
Correct.
And that's the top number?
Right.
Correct.
The 23 is relatively flat. Some of the benefits are a function of the salary, but most of them are the medical and medical costs. But that, yes, that is the top step, the 10th step out of 10 steps.
Other council discussion, questions? Molly?
I have a question. I noticed this says ongoing website maintenance and updates, and don't we pay our IT group to do just that? It's been a source of enormous frustration for me to not see it happen month after month after month.
They're not really content managers for us.
Wasn't that a part of the contract that they signed this year, that they were going to do that? They were going to have a secondary group that was going to do it for us, and that was going to be a part of what we paid them?
That's for the relaunch.
Relaunch.
So
Which has not happened?
It's in progress still.
Yeah.
We've been working on collaborating with the outside vendor and getting input. Trevor and Joanne are actually incorporating some of those questions in their walk and talks with businesses in the city to determine what folks around town think about the website and what the benefit would be. I believe we're getting a report this week on that. But this person would be responsible for folks within the city to go through to put content on the website and keep it updated and live. IT would probably still perform that function of actually adding and deleting, but they would take direction from this position and have one contact person to make sure that it's edited and ready to go, and because that's not one of their functions to edit what staff tell them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Mayor, if I could just add a comment. I think for me, one of the key components of this particular position is that there are a number of responsibilities that this person will take on that are coming directly off of Jennifer's plate, specifically managing over our IT contract, not the financial aspects of the IT contract, but the day-to-day oversight of the IT contract, the day-to-day oversight of our public disclosure process, which is a high-risk proposition for local governments because of the penalties that can accrue to us if we inadvertently even somehow fail to be responsive. There are examples of significant problems that communities have had, not because of any malfeasance, but just simply because of the complexities. Also, our overall records management process, so that Jennifer can free up packet management of the council meetings and all of that, so that Jennifer can focus her attention and efforts on the higher level financial responsibilities and keep us running smooth with our audits and with our financial policies, and be deployed in the way I think that we really need our finance director to be deployed.
Mr. Mayor, as long as this position, and what I see in the agenda bill, it sounds like it's something that we do need in there, but how do you sustain this position next year in the budget?
It's already in the budget budget for next year, the addition of this position, the change with RJ's position not being filled, the addition of the accountant is where we still end it, and the reallocation of the utility billing is that whole equation that ends up that $10,000 savings on an annualized basis.
It's ongoing savings.
And my concern is that we don't hire somebody and then next year or the year after that, we find out that our budget won't sustain that position and then we're back to square one, so.
We would, under the current scenario, we would be, I'm not sure what the right term would be, we would be harder pressed to sustain the staff that we have in the way that they are deployed currently versus a new deployment, which ends up adding staff to us. I get that part of it, but it is savings to the city.
Okay.
And better it reallocates the folks into areas where they need to be. Other comments, Paul?
I just want to make sure I did correctly understand. So this amounts to a savings of about somewhere in the range of $11,000 a year on an ongoing basis.
That number is with all the positions at the highest steps possible. So yes, it will be
So-
at least 11,000, if not more, depending on where we start them.
So if we start them kind of mid-range, we're going to save more than that?
Correct.
Thank you.
John?
And I would say if we didn't have the position, it would be a cost savings of about $83,000. I would like to make an amendment striking as the assistant to the city administrator from this code that's been brought forward.
Can I get some clarification, please?
Clarification of?
Striking this particular position and what would action number 3 mean at that point?
You would have everything in there with the exception of adding the new position. I'm not hearing a second.
Second.
So, Mr. Mayor,
Was reading, sorry.
point of clarification. What this would do would be add it to the personnel manual, but not create the position?
No, this would add the other changes that are pointed out in item number 3. The addition of the position is only one item that's within that item.
So, would you explain once more in words of one syllable, what is the impact of the amendment?
Right now, the impact of the amendment isn't the question. Right now, the motion is simply to strike that new position out of the discussion, basically.
To eliminate the position from the discussion?
Correct.
Mr. Mayor, if I could
From the
just,
agenda item.
if I could clarify, this particular component of the proposed Chapter 2A, which is basically the department head's manual, does not add a position. It doesn't ask the council to add a position to the staffing level of the organization. What it asks the council to do is to create a salary range for a position that doesn't exist. It creates a classification that doesn't exist, that classification being assistant to the city administrator, and it assigns a salary level to it, and it provides for a vacation schedule that's distinct from other non-union folks and makes it align with the 307 union. But it's not seeking appropriation to add or to go and recruit and hire. That appropriation exists. And the administration is able to deploy within the appropriation that you've made. What this would do is allow us to deploy that appropriation at this level with this type of resource. Without this level or this type of resource, then the administration would likely deploy with some existing classification or resource. I think that would be the effect of the amendment.
Okay, that was my understanding.
And the downside to that is if it's an existing classification, it is a non-confidential employee, which puts us in the same position that we're in now, where David and I are a little hard pressed, as is Jeanette, for some of the things that we do, not being able to have the assistance of the assistants that we should have in a confidential. I'm not sure what the right terms would be.
They can be part of our bargaining team, and they can be otherwise engaged in what are confidential types of issues. And frankly, it wouldn't be the job classification that's necessary for the role that we've targeted here. We would probably recraft the role a little bit. You know, we'd regroup and recraft the role somewhat.
Just to clarify, that there are human resources information or data or whatever you want to call it, which by law is confidential and not subject to open records or things like that. Is that correct?
There are, with certain exceptions, but human resources data is one of the exempt disclosable.
Strategies for negotiations and disciplinary actions, those types of things are typically confidential, not subject to public records.
Right. So that's the range of the confidential things that we're talking about here is one, labor bargaining, and also those personnel issues which by law are exempt from public records and in some cases are required to be held confidentially. That's basically what we're talking about here as far as confidential.
That would be the human resources context for it. There are some other contexts of confidentiality as well that are not necessarily statutory.
Okay.
Proprietary issues that come up as we deal with certain businesses and around economic
certainly.
development and some other items.
Thank you.
Other council discussion? Okay, I've got a motion and a second to strike to add the NU2 pay level from item number 3.
I'm sorry, we're adding it or just striking?
Striking the NU2 pay level.
So a yes vote moves to strike.
Correct.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Roll call?
Councilmember Russell?
Aye.
Councilmember Morris?
No.
Councilmember Greenlee?
No.
Councilmember McDaniel?
Aye.
Councilmember Shoemaker?
Aye.
And Councilmember Coaston?
No.
And the mayor votes no. Motion fails.
Motion fails.
Excuse me, Mayor, did you vote no or yes?
I voted no. Motion fails. So we still have a motion and a second, basically to approve item number 3.
As
there-
written.
As written. Any additional council comment? Molly?
I am still troubled. I mean, I begrudgingly voted no, but I do have some problem with adding a position, even if I know that it creates a small decrease in overhead. I do understand the need for it when you talk confidentiality, and I will begrudgingly support this portion of the resolution, but I would certainly advise the administration to use great caution in hiring someone, an additional person. I know you will.
Other council discussion? Dave?
Just very briefly, I don't think this is the time to be adding to the workforce. The picture that we see is too uncertain. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other council discussion?
I'm also not in favor of adding this position. While many other departments are cutting back and having to do without, I really don't see a necessity for this position. We had a city administrator that did not have an assistant for quite a while, and they seem to do a very good job, so I'll be voting against this.
Other council, John?
Mr. Mayor, I personally, I mean, I can appreciate the fact that there is a lot of workload, and I know each of you work very hard at this job. However, for me, I look at this and I'm seeing this as a want and not a need. And so I'll be voting no.
Paul?
To use one of the phrases that we hear sometimes in the press about what's going on overseas, I consider this a force multiplier. That with this kind of administrative support, we get more and better work from our administrator and our human resources director and from our finance director, and we save about $11,000 a year in an ongoing basis. To me, that seems like a pretty clear choice.
Any other council discussion? Dave?
I appreciate the analogy of the force multiplier. As a soldier, you learn very early that force multipliers are very valuable, and you get every one that you can. But there are limits on the budget. There's only so much you can have, and the rest of the time you have to depend on the hard work and the valor of your soldiers. And I think we're in the situation where we're going to have to depend on the hard work of the people that are in these positions now.
Okay. Any other council discussion? From an administrative standpoint, I empathize with those of you who see this as adding positions within the city. It does add positions within the city. From an administrative standpoint, it makes no sense to myself, and I believe to our other administrators who have had obviously more time than you all to look through and assess the finance department and the positions within that department. I'll reiterate again, if we simply filled RJ's position and if we went on with business as usual, we would cost the city more money, we would have less employees, and we would not be getting the optimum amount of work from those employees for the positions that they would be in. That was a position that we have been in for well before I started with the city. And it is one that we have struggled with over the last year to try and find some ways to recraft that department into a finance department that isn't the catch-all for all the other stuff. It is still a reality that Mrs. Forsberg is at times going to be answering the phone. She's going to be taking payments. She's going to be doing whatever it takes to make sure that the finance department is running, just as the other employees within that finance department are. But there are a number of other administrative duties that have, over the years, just kind of fallen into that department, and that's where they sit. I think I mentioned last week, or at least in one other meeting, that the fact that this title comes assistant to the city administrator really doesn't do it justice for what the true position is going to be. Without that position and without some other recrafting of different things, we are going to be back in the same position that we were in. We will be able to manage, but we will not be able to manage well with the people that we have doing the positions that we have approved in there. If we want to be able to keep websites up, if we want to be able to respond adequately without degrading the service that we have for requests for public records, if we want to be able to have our management team doing some of those additional things that are truly a management level and not a clerk level, which again, they will gladly do. They've been doing it to some degree. Then we haven't solved a problem that I think many of us have known is there, including members of the council. So again, I certainly understand that this is adding positions to the city. It adds positions at a savings to the city and helps us to better align that department with the employees doing those tasks that they are well suited to do, and puts us in a position to be much more successful than what we are today. With that, I'll make a last call for any council comments. Dave?
In a situation like this, there are two solutions. One is to add people, and the other is to sit down as a management team and set priorities. What's going to get done first? What's not going to be done? And I have full faith and confidence in our administrative team to be able to do that. And I think that, in this case, is the solution, so I'll be voting for that tonight.
Any other council?
I do. I have a couple more comments. Going back to the presentation from last Monday, the staffing summary, I think that all of the ideas are fantastic. Moving the accounting manager position up to the assistant finance director, eliminating the accounting manager position, hiring a city accountant, doing direct cost plan, as far as the accounting specialists and 25% for the accounting clerk to the utility, redirecting the costs for these salaries. I think that's excellent. Fantastic cost savings, but I would like us to retain that cost savings and not redirect it basically into yet another position. So I'll be voting no on this particular portion of the agenda bill.
Any other items? Okay, I've got a motion and a second to approve item number 3 as it is written in your agenda bill. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No?
Roll call?
Councilmember Coaston?
Aye.
Councilmember Shoemaker?
No?
Councilmember McDaniel?
No?
Councilmember Greenlee?
Aye.
Councilmember Morris?
Aye.
And Councilmember Russell?
No. And mayor votes yes. Motion carries. I believe 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I believe that takes care of all of the motions and approvals that we needed on that item.
For the resolutions, right, we have the next item, which is a companion item.
Don, do you have everything that you need for that item?
I think basically it's the one that's in the agenda packet after all this was said and done. It's broken down, each one passed individually, so.
Okay. Agenda Bill 11811, changes to the Washougal Municipal Code. David?
Thank you, Mayor. Council, before you is a recommended action to amend our code and to delete from it a variety of sections in Title II that relate to personnel. Every section of the code that is proposed to be repealed is covered in your personnel policies. This is something that you have acknowledged and staff has acknowledged for some time, that we needed to clean this particular discrepancy up and delete these items from the code and continue to rely upon our personnel policies. We function pursuant to the personnel policies, and in fact, there are some areas of conflict between outdated code and the current policies that you've adopted. So really, this is a cleanup item that's been some time in coming, and we decided to bring it forward to you since we were amending the personnel policies as well. And the recommended action specifically is to read the ordinance by title only and then to pass, post, and publish in the usual manner.
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that we read the ordinance by title only.
Hearing no objection, so ordered.
An ordinance repealing specific portions of the Washougal Municipal Code relating to outdated personnel policies.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner.
Second.
I've got a motion to pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner. Council discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda Bill 11911, a professional service agreement with Mr. Paul Lewis. Jennifer, Dave?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. With the departure of the Assistant Finance Director, the Finance Department has the need to contract with Paul Lewis for budget assistance, policy development, and additional financial assistance. The Finance Department has professional service dollars appropriated as part of the 2011 budget and will also utilize the cost savings from the time delay of filling the vacant position in the department. I did notice on page 2 of the contract that it had the wrong dollar amount. It should be the same as the estimated costs on the back of the $20,700, and that has been corrected in the final copy, original copy up here that will be signed. But the recommended action is to authorize the mayor to sign the agreement with Paul Lewis for financial consulting services.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we authorize the mayor to sign the agreement with Paul Lewis for financial consulting services.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to authorize the mayor to sign the agreement with Mr. Paul Lewis for financial consulting services. Council discussion? Dave?
A question for the staff, if I may? Does this by any chance free up, does the addition of the position we just added free up resources to do this kind of work? And do we have the expertise to do it?
Not in the, go ahead.
I was going to say it would potentially in the future, certainly not for this budget year.
Okay, and second question is, do we have the expertise to do this sort of thing?
If we had staff time currently, we could, yes. And with the addition of the accountant for next year, it's definitely something that we can build on from this year to next year for staff.
Okay, I understand, thanks.
Now, in addition to that, I believe, though, it would be our intent annually to bring a small PSA with Mr. Lewis or somewhere similar to him for consulting services going through the budget preparation, just from a skill level that he brings that is so vastly varied compared to what we have on our micro level right within the city itself. He certainly and many others do those services for folks that potentially it's not a whole lot of money at all, but at least looking at what we're proposing out there compared to what the real world truly is. And there are so many different places you can look and so many different numbers you can find, and valuations are up, they're down. How much are they down? All those types of things. And I believe that there's certainly a trust level with Paul and a track record with Paul of being able to do that very concisely, very accurately and comfortably for the city, just as we do for some other folks, just to get a different pulse out there. So while Jennifer is correct in saying yes, I don't want to mislead the council that in the future we may not be asking for small PSAs every year just to do that final check and do that gut check as we go through a $32 million budget annually. Other council items? Molly?
Just a comment, I know there were several of us that worked with Paul Lewis on that budget team some time ago, and I would have to say he's an extraordinary individual, incredibly professional, very knowledgeable. I think he's certainly worth every penny. He ended up saving us a lot of money in this current year's budget, and I think that's one of the reasons that we landed on our feet this year, is with his most able assistants.
I would second that, and also, as someone who's had a certain amount of training as an economist myself, I was most impressed by his professional skills and knowledge in being able to project or forecast revenue and expenses and all of the other things that go along with that. And at the same time, there's a tendency, I think, on forecasters, any forecast kind of fits into a bell curve somewhere. And there's a tendency for forecasters to want to hit the peak, the median. And in discussions with Paul, Paul was sufficiently professional that he said his target was to be out in the tail far enough so that 80% of the news is good news, rather than 50% good and 50% bad. He wants 80% of the news to be good news. And I think he's done that for us also. That, for example, the building permits and the revenue that's generated from that and the sales tax on the building materials that go into building those houses are notably ahead of what we projected for the year. And all of our other estimates are pretty close to at or slightly above what was projected. So that is a particular and an even peculiar skill set that Paul Lewis brings to the table that I'm quite certain that none of us here on council have, and the staff, they have other responsibilities and other skills, and I think it makes sense to bring in that kind of expert for that. I'm talking more about next year, because he's pretty much done that for us this year. But this work that he's doing will help us get next year's budget in the kind of shape that we really need it to be. He has been an incredible help in getting us through the difficult transition and in producing a budget that worked.
Any other council comments?
I have a question,
Yes.
if I may. I do not recall how much we spent on this particular item for last year. Do we recall
Paul's initial
what the budget was for last year?
Paul's initial contract last year was 20,000, and I believe we then did a supplement to that and added to it as well. That was his the PSA that we did for him for the entire financial checkup, if you would. I don't remember how much the PSA was in the second half of the year.
I don't remember specifically. Mayor, I think it's important to clarify too that this particular PSA isn't really just a mirror of what he did for us in 2010. There are
Correct.
two very specific deliverables which are project-based. The first is to develop fully our equipment replacement fund financial policies. As you recall, the council created an equipment repair and replacement fund, as part of the 2011 budget, so that we were deploying a best practice for replacing rolling stock over time, and it's a sinking fund, if you would, and saving over time so that we can not be challenged with large cash expenditures all of a sudden when equipment goes down. Instead, we've saved for it. There's complex financial analysis to do that. Jennifer's done that. She can do that, but with the departure of the departure of RJ, Paul can help us do that project so that Jennifer can stay on the day-to-day. And then the other is the indirect cost plan. It's been the subject of performance audit by the state auditor as part of their performance auditing program, and they have preliminarily come out with some best practices that all of us as municipalities are seeking to adopt, and that report hopefully will be out soon. And our policy is out of date. It's been one of the chores that we tasked Jennifer with. Again, a very specific project that Paul can help us with that she's now not able to get to with the departure of RJ. And then thirdly, there is general financial support, which would most likely be utilized in our budgeting process. There is an appropriation for this in the budget under professional services. In addition to that, there's the salary savings from RJ's departure. It's most likely that the cost of Paul's effort and the salary savings from RJ's departure between now and when we can fill the accountant, that salary savings will be in excess of what this expenditure is. Very common when you have a position like that leave that you'll backfill with professional assistance of some kind. We thought about bringing in an accountant from a temporary agency and to do it that way and have Jen work on these projects and then have the accountant do some of the day-to-day work that Jen will be doing. We decided to go this way and have Jen stay with the day-to-day since she's closer to that, and have Paul work on these specific projects that we needed. sorry for the lengthy details, but that was our thinking process behind bringing Paul in. Otherwise, we probably would have just hired a temp accountant, wouldn't have required a PSA or any council action.
Any other council questions, council discussion? Okay, I've got a motion and a second to authorize the mayor to sign the agreement with Paul Lewis for financial consulting services. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to the end of the business portions this evening and to a time for the public with any other items that you'd like to address council with. Any members of the public? Harvey?
Listening to Harvey Olson, 3903 R Street, listening to some comments on the savings of money. I started first grade 74 years ago, and they taught basic math. And basic math was pretty simple. If you look at an item that costs $50 and they have it marked 20% down at $40 and you buy it, you're not saving $10, you're spending $40. If you want to save the $50, you don't spend it. But to say that it's a savings of 20%, if you buy something for $40 and it's marked at $50, you're not saving anything, you're just spending less money. I wish people would say spending less money instead of saving. There's no savings. You're just spending less. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Any other members of the public? Mr. Bolin?
Yes, I wasn't going to say anything, but I got to support Harvey because it was interesting to hear part of the council tell me how you could save money that was not being spent. I just couldn't quite fathom that. But one of the things that I think is required, and I'm trying to meet with Jennifer, we haven't had a chance to meet yet, is it clears the air if you go to cash flow, and the first thing you need to know is what did the accounting department spend last year? Not what was its budget, what did they spend, and what are we going to spend this year? And with those numbers, then you can find out whether or not you're saving money or not. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Don. Any other members of the public wishing to address council? Okay. I have no additional items for you this evening. Are there any items from council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I know we spoke about the timeline on East Street tonight. Do we have a timeline of when the fines double signs are going to be taken down? I mean, is that just going to be a total end of the project? Will it coincide with what we passed tonight? I know that we're going to eventually be doing south side sidewalks, but for the time being, there's no construction going on the south on that west side of East Street, and people are still getting dinged for double fines. So, wanted to know when and if that sign's going to be taken down. So,
Jim.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. We're thinking at substantial completion. That's extended to the second week in October. So once we get the striping down and people are able to utilize the facility up to its full potential, we will remove those signs.
The sidewalks for the south side on the west side will most likely be a separate, well, they are a separate project from that and will happen separately from all of that. I don't anticipate, though, that we're going to need to put any construction signs back up for that duration of that project going in. We'll just make sure that they're properly coned, everything else. But for the most part, all of that area is already striped, ready to go, and there's adequate passing areas in there without necessarily putting any of the workers at danger.
thank you.
Are there any other items from council? Paul?
I just wanted to clarify one thing. We're hoping for completion the second week in October. Can we pave if it's raining?
Yeah, that would depend on the amount of rain coming down, and also striping could be compromised with weather as well.
Thank you. I also wanted to take note that this weekend, the local LDS church provided over 100 volunteers to work in our parks. Probably the most challenging job was that they moved what's called gabion rock, which is basically boulders the size of your head or maybe a little larger, from one side of the creek to the other, because it will be used as part of the, effectively the foundation, actually erosion control for the foundation to a bridge, a trail bridge that will cross that creek. But there was also a huge group that went over to Captain Clark Park and picked up trash. Another significant group went to Beaver Park, which is actually just west of the fire station, and planted 200 small trees and shrubs. There was also work done at Hathaway, at Steamboat Landing, at Campen Creek. Have to get my list here. And I actually was at Kerr Park, and we started with a fairly small group there, but when those people finished their other projects, they said, well, we signed up to be here until noon, so we'll go over someplace else and work. So they came over to Kerr Park, where we were spreading fabric and wood chips and bark dust to create trails over there, which the high school cross-country team will use. So I just wanted to extend my particular thanks to that whole group of people. It's such a treat to have people who volunteer to make things better in the city. Thank you.
Any other items, Dave?
I'd like to thank Councilman Greenlee for his rapier-like riposte tonight. Nothing I enjoy more than crossing minds with somebody who has a good mind. I would also point out that I agree with you. I don't think the federal government is a very good example of organizational effectiveness or efficiency. And to explain how I can possibly say that after I made that comment, I would point out that I left the federal government's employ more than 2 decades ago. And at that time, it was an entirely different government, the way it worked. And I worked in a small section of it run by the Department of the Army. And they run a tight ship. So, thank you.
The Army has ships?
Strangely enough, it
They do.
does.
I'm sure they do.
It has a riverine force and resupply ships.
Well, actually, it has boats, not ships, but yeah.
Actually, they do have some ships.
Any other items from council? I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to adjourn. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thanks for your support. I thought you made some very good points.